part 2 of our Casket empty discussion this morning. We're now going to be jumping into chapter 24. We have to change gears here. We're going to be talking about love and marriage. Love at first sight, and then we're going to talk about how Isaac and Rebekah get married. Then Isaac is eventually comforted after the death of his mother. What's the key verse in this chapter 24? I think it may be verse 58. It says this: "So they called Rebekah and asked her, 'Will you go with this man?' 'I will go,' she said." Why this verse, you may ask? Well, throughout this chapter, we see that the woman was allowed to choose whether she should go with Abraham's servant or not. Rebekah made a conscious decision to go be married to Abraham's son Isaac. Or it could be Genesis 24:4. "But will go to my country and my own relatives and get a wife for my son Isaac." Very similar reasons as well. It's about God providing for his people these heirs so they can have children and move on. What's the rough outline of chapter 24? First, we see in verses 1 through 9 the mission, Abraham's desire. We then see part 2, a meeting, the servant's declaration in Genesis 24:10 through 27. Third part is motivation, Rebekah's desire to get married, Genesis 24:28 through 60. And finally, the marriage itself, Isaac's delight. We see this in verses 61 through 67. Well, what lessons can we learn? Let's jump through and go through this pretty quickly. It's a long chapter, so I'm going to try to go as quick as I can. We see in Genesis 3 through 4, a child's mate should be a concern of every parent, the same way Abraham cared who his son would marry. "I want you to swear by the Lord, the God of heaven and God of earth, that you will not get a wife for my son from the daughters of the Canaanites, among whom I am living, but will go to my country and my own relatives, and will get a wife for my son Isaac." Abraham is deeply concerned about who Isaac will marry. The patriarch Abraham had great trust also in the providence of the Lord. Verse 7 we see this: "The Lord, the God of heaven, who brought me out of my father's household in my native land, and who spoke to me and promised me an oath, saying, 'To your offspring I will give this land.'" It's a promise again. We see this throughout the book of Genesis. We see the one of obligations of the servants, that is, to obey their master. Verse 10, "Then the servant left, taking with him 10 of his master's camels loaded with all kinds of good things from his master. He set out for Abraham Nahraim, and made his way to the town of Nabor." We then see also the servant exhibited trust in God through prayer. The servant prayed, yes. Verses 12 through 14. "Then he prayed, 'Lord God of my master Abraham, make me successful today, and show kindness to my master Abraham.'" Only God can answer prayer very quickly, we see in verse 15. Before he had finished praying, Rebekah came out with her jar on her shoulder. She was the daughter of Bethuel of Beulah, who was the wife of Abraham's brother Nahor. There's no shame, though, in an individual also being a virgin. We see in Genesis 24, verse 16. "The woman was very beautiful, a virgin. No man had ever slept with her. She went down to the spring, filled her jar, and came up again." We then also see a little bit further in verse 21. God's providence does not always immediately reveal itself to us. Without saying a word, the man watched her closely to learn whether or not the Lord had made his journey successful. They weren't quite sure yet. There was patience here. We then proceed to verses 26 through 27. "The God who blesses our lives is worthy of our worship. The man bowed down and worshipped the Lord, saying, 'Praise be to the Lord, the God of my master Abraham, who has not abandoned his kindness and faithfulness to my master. As for me, the Lord has led me on the journey to the house of my master's relatives.'" We then are blessed with one another, a picture of hospitality, which is verses 31 through 33. "Come, you who are blessed by the Lord," she said. "Why are you standing out here? I have prepared the house and a place for the camels." So the man went to the house, and the camels were unloaded. Straw and fodder were brought for the camels, and water for him and his men to wash their feet. Then the food was set before him. Hospitality has been a key teaching in the book of Genesis. We see this again here. But delays to the plans of God could hinder the fulfillment, possibly, in verses 55 and 56. But her brother and mother replied, "Let the young woman remain with us 10 days or so, then you may go." But he said to them, "Do not detain me now. Now that the Lord has granted success to my journey, send me on my way so I may go to my master." We then see Rebekah was now going to be part of the fulfillment of God's plan in verse 60. "And they blessed Rebekah and said to her, 'Our sister, may you increase to thousands upon thousands. May your offspring possess the cities of their enemies.'" It's that promise Abraham has given through his children, now seeing fulfilled through Rebekah. Then men need a period of meditation in their day, we see. He went out to the field one evening to meditate. importance of meditating in all of our lives, men and women. Then we see in our day, we marry the one we love. But in biblical times, they loved the one they married. Yes, Isaac, in verse 67, brought her into the tent of his mother Sarah, and he married Rebekah. So she became his wife, and he loved her. Very interesting way of looking at this. And finally, there are things that enter our lives to comfort us after the loss of a loved one. We see in verse 67, the final verse of chapter 24, and Isaac was comforted after his mother's death by Rebekah. What do we learn from this chapter 24? We learn that God's steadfast love is seen in personal and practical means. God's love moves forward in his plan for Isaac to find a wife within Abraham's lifetime so that the promise will continue and the blessing will be passed down. We also learn that God's promise is generational. His plans unfolds as the promises pass from one generation to the next, from Abraham to Isaac to Jacob. Likewise today, God's plan and his blessing in Christ is passed from one generation to the next in the call to make disciples. Finally, we should be encouraged that God is the giver of every good and perfect gift. God is the one who works out the detail through the servant's actions to find and provide a wife for Isaac. It did not just happen because the servant had the right plan or worked hard or got lucky. It came because of God's steadfast and faithful love to his people. We're now going to break into small groups and talk about chapter 24. Thanks.